All right, everybody, let's get settled down. Grab your seats, please. We have an epic session this afternoon for you guys, so please have a seat. Please settle down, everyone. Come on in, please. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is a logistical thing, okay? So people have been asking about the Ginkgo Bioworks tour. We had concocted a plan last night to have a line and have people just show up in a line, and we were going to do something like that. But I think there's feedback that people don't want to just do it by a line and want to just sign up. So we are going to do that. And Nicole over there has sign-up sheets for the Ginkgo tour, okay? But my request for you guys, again, you know, I really apologize because I don't know how many of you are here out of the 200. I don't know how many of the 200 are actually, you know, have traveled from far to be here and so on. So my request would be this, okay? Over the course of this session, between now and, let me see, the next coffee break, let's say. The next coffee break goes until 3. Feel free to sign up, but let's give preference for international folks, okay? If you're from the US, just chill, okay? Just wait. So if you're international, not from the US, and you really want to go to the Ginkgo tour, go find Nicole. Nicole, where are we going to have the sign-up sheet? Info point. So the sign-up sheet will be at the info point. Our international guests, go ahead, sign up if you want to go. And again, if you can't make it, there's still an amazing whole thing with the food computer, and it's an incredible system, and so Tim is going to do that later. So fret not, you will still get an awesome experience after dinner. But find Nicole, sign up there. I'm getting some feedback, Pete. I don't know what's going on, if I'm like standing too close to something, but. Oh, okay, okay. All right, so that's the game plan. International folks, sign up until 3, and then after 3, we'll let people in the US sign up. Okay, but people in the US, if you're from Boston or like this northeast area, you wait again. Wait until 5 o'clock. Okay, wait until after dinner and we'll see if there's space. Okay, so I think that's just the fairest way to do it. We're gonna go by kind of increasing distance. Your ability to access the tour is proportional to the distance you are from here. All right, so we'll do it that way. Sound good? Yeah? Okay, so we are going to start our next session now on diversity and inclusion. I am so excited that we have Stephanie here with us. Stephanie, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi.
Yes, yes, technology, Zoom, it works. Woo! So, Stephanie, where are you right now?
I'm in Vienna in Europe now.
Amazing, amazing. So, we've been having some, like, I don't even know, late night for me, early morning for you. Actually, I'm going to stand here so you can see me. Can you see me now? Where should I stand, Peter? Should I stand here?
I don't see anything. I don't see the camera at the moment. I just see my full screen. But I know how you look like.
Oh, okay. All right. Just listen then. Just listen then. Okay. Well, anyways, I've been having some really, really great conversations with Stephanie about her perspectives on feminism and how that relates to biotech. And I'm just so inspired by you, Stephanie, and your work. You know, again, Stephanie put out an unconference as well, which I think was the most popular unconference of the entire sheet was on feminist perspectives on biotech. So, Stephanie, I hope that on Sunday, you know, again, we've got, oh, and by the way, shout outs to MIT AV. Everybody make some noise for Peter and for Tony, Steven, and Steven, yes, holding it down, making it happen. And also MIT Video over here, too, for holding it down with the live stream. Everybody make some noise for MIT Video, please. Thank you, guys. So we're gonna try, Stephanie, like on Saturday or Sunday to do an unconference with you on that session, and we'll talk later about. Oh, I think we figured out a time maybe Sunday at 10 a.m. Right? That was gonna be good for you, so it's a little since it's 6 hours. So maybe can somebody volunteer to just write that on the unconference wall that Sunday at 10 a.m. we're gonna do unconference with Stephanie on feminist perspectives on biotech. And by the way, that unconference wall is looking shamefully empty. Okay, so I know everybody's still gonna know each other, but let's start filling that wall up. Okay. So anyways, Stephanie, it's such an honor to have you, and really looking forward to your talk. So everybody, a round of applause for Stephanie, please.
Hi, folks. I hope you had a really delicious lunch. I'm sorry I cannot be with you in person. Here it's already evening, but I'm super honored that I can talk to you, and thanks for being there. I'm going to talk about feminist perspectives on biotech and the issue of participation in tech development. As you know, open source software is not really inclusive. It's funny that open source software that's produced open labs and citizen labs and tech spaces and hacker spaces is only 1.5% female identified people, while in the commercial world, in the proprietary software, it's 28%. So I was wondering about that, because it's weird. This community is really open, it's really trying to be accessible, but then it fails so much when it comes to inclusion of female identified people. So why is that? I mean, even in places like Wikipedia, where it's about text editing and authorship, it's 90% male and just 9% female and 1% transgender people. So why is that? Why is there such a small amount of authors just represented here? And in also other open hardware projects, it's just a very small amount of female perspectives represented. So I would like to see how to get more female programmers, female hackers, female artists into that scene. I think the reason is some kind of hidden censorship. I mean, if you look at these little people, the people in the middle, they look kind of masculine, right? They don't look feminine doing all this techie stuff. So I think that if we look at technology in technology spaces, a lot of people go in and they think, oh, this is not for me. It's my personal impression that this is not for me. This is not interesting for me. But I really believe that to think this is not for me is a very structural and systematic feeling that a lot of people are kept from participating in labs. So I think how it all happens, this invisible censorship, has to do with the way that we live our gender, how we learn how to live our gender. I think that like Judith Butler and Simone de Beauvoir already 150 years ago, I think that gender is something that you learn. It's not something that you're born with, but you learn how to behave in a feminine way, how to interact in a feminine way, how to dress in a feminine way, and you learn how to behave, act, dress, interact in a masculine way. And in our culture, I believe that making technology like system administration and programming and welding and soldering is a way of performing masculinity. So if someone who identifies as feminine usually, or is raised as a female, is producing something like hardware or a system administrating or programming or welding or soldering, other people will think, oh, she tries to be masculine, and not, okay, this is just her interest. So I think this is our culture, and culture can be changed. And that's why a lot of people try to change the culture around technology to make it more inclusive. So some people made a very funny attempt by making pink and red software and hardware. So for example, the Sakura board or the LilyPad, they put little flowers on it and they made it look very girlish and feminine. And I think it's a nice try, but the problem is that many people in workshops, if I offer them Arduino and a pink microcontroller, they always will think that the pink one is easier to learn, that it's more simple. Although it's actually not true at all. If you look at the performance of these different microcontrollers, the pink one is actually more powerful, but people will always associate pink with more simple, lighthearted, easier. And that's something that we really want to work against, right? This role model of femininity being something not at the same equal level like masculine. So I think the pink software and pink hardware idea doesn't really work, because it's just replicating these gender roles. So do we, how do we deal with technology then in combination with feminism? If that doesn't work to break with gender roles with the pink hardware, how can we have women have a say in tech development? In this talk and also in the unconference session, I will not represent all the different kinds of feminisms who deal with tech and deal with biotech, because there's so many different perspectives, some really believing in essential womanhood, and some totally not believing in anything binary. but I want to introduce 3 different mainstreams of the last maybe 50 years. One of them is ecofeminists. It was embraced very much by women of color and communities of indigenous groups, because it kind of claims that the patriarchy oppression leads to exploitation of land, exploitation of indigenous people, and exploitation of women and non-binary people. So it kind of makes a connection that patriarchy is the reason for both exploitation of women, exploitation of the natural resources. So they were really strong in the 70s and were very activist and really tried to they were actually really hostile against technology and industrial exploitation. A little later in the 90s was the famous cyber feminists who completely more than embraced technology and said that, okay, the female body is kind of not so important anymore because we are extending it with animals, with hybrids, with computers, with the matrix, with virtual worlds. And then we are actually these cyborgs that are not limited within the gender roles of being a woman anymore. I'm sure you know Donna Haraway and her cyber feminist manifesto. And then more recently, now in the last 5 years, there are the xenofeminists who are kind of saying, okay, technology is really alienating us from our environment, but that's great. That's exactly what we need in order to have the courage to change the world and change everything that's unjust in the world, and really be more bold about taking over and manipulating the environment. So, I mean, these things, these 3 things have quite, as we see, quite different opinions toward technology and how to deal with technology. But maybe we can talk about it more in the unconference session. I want to go more deeply into my own collective, my own feminist approach. I've got a collective that's also running a feminist hackerspace here in Vienna in Europe. And we started 2009 and we're called Miss Balthasar's Laboratory. We are doing all kinds of projects exclusively for women and transgender people, non-binary people, because we believe that if you, for example, as a guy, have a nail polish on your hands, maybe people look at you, but if there are just guys in the room wearing nail polish, they will be completely fine and it will be new normal. And so that's what we do in our workshops. We give workshop about open hardware, and if all the people are usually hesitant to do this, but then they see everyone is doing it, and it's becoming the new normal. It's a new form of gender expression. So that's how we try to kind of systematically change the culture around masculinity and technology. We do our most important part is, as I said, workshops, tech literacy, that people really break things apart, open them, hack them, make their own prototypes, and really try to learn how to produce technology, to develop technology. Another focus is like having a safer space where people can try out things, take risks, demystify technology for them, not have all these ideas of what it could do, but really try to see what is possible, what is not possible. And another really important part of our work is art-based research, because every one of the 7 people organizing it is kind of an artist doing art-based research. The only scene, I think, that's more male-dominated than the open hardware and open source software scene is maybe the art scene, the contemporary art scene, because of all the art collections in Europe and the US, it's just 5% female artists and transgender artists. So we really try to give women tech people and women media artists and transgender media artists the possibility to have a solo show, because this is really, really hard to get. And what it all comes down to us is to open to a certain diversity of people from different classes, different religions, different ages, different backgrounds, and also allow them to try out different forms of gender expression and use gender expression in an unorthodox way. Yeah, then, I mean, I wanted to share something more personal. I'm pregnant now, and I went yesterday to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, you should do a prenatal test. And I said, what kind of? Yeah, it will let you know if your baby has Down syndrome. And then I asked the doctor, but what if I find out through this test that my baby has Down syndrome? She said, oh, you can then prepare better. And I said, and I was really surprised because I thought she would say, yeah, then your family can prepare, or the community can prepare, or the government can prepare to help you raise the child, right? But in fact, 90% of women doing this prenatal test, they make an abortion after they find out that their child has Down syndrome, because people make tests, get information, collect data, but then no one kind of takes responsibility for the consequences of that. So yeah, I said I will not take this test. And yeah, there are a lot of things about collecting data that sometimes are not neutral, you know, they have a lot of effect on people's lives. So another example I wanted to bring is the pacemaker. Most pacemakers are made for some kind of male standard profile. So if you are a woman who gets pregnant and you have a pacemaker in your heart, next to your heart, it could be that you get an electric shock, which is like kind of the opposite of what's really supportive in your pregnancy, to get electric shocks. And it's because they are not open source. They are not produced obviously by people who consider also that people can get pregnant, but they are standardized for one statistically most likely standard situation. So I think if women get into that terminology, into computational thinking, if they become part of the development scene more, then these things will be considered also. And people don't have to wait and demand for someone to change it for them, but people can change things themselves to make it compatible with their own individual situation. So now I want to show some photos of our collective. This is our group of feminist hackerspace, the people who organize it. And we tried to set up different spaces in other places in the world. This was in Syria and Damascus, 2010. We tried to set up a feminist hackerspace there, a safer space there. There were a lot of informatic students, but unfortunately there is war now, so that didn't work out. But in Taiwan, it worked out. And in Indonesia, there's now a collective called XX Lab that formed after we did the workshop there. And in Copenhagen, there's also a collective now, a feminist hackerspace collective. We do festivals in different places. This was in Vienna, this was in Belgrade, 2011. This is our space that we've got in Vienna, which is like a window shop and a small room for hacking and for doing exhibitions. And then we also, as a collective, as an artist collective, do exhibitions and shows and performances ourselves. This was, for example, just 2 weeks ago when we were massaging code into people's bodies. So people could come and choose what they want to embody, which kind of information, then we, with an algorithm, massaged it into them. Yeah, so this was a lot of information. I hope we can discuss it more at the unconference session. Thanks so much for listening. And yeah, I hope to see you soon on Sunday.
Stephanie, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And just in general, I apologize. We have a pretty tight schedule today, so we'll hold the questions. But keep your questions in your mind, note them down, and we're going to do a whole hour with Stephanie on Sunday morning. So can we give another big round of applause for Stephanie? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have fun. Bye.
Okay, Stephanie, we'll see you soon. Okay, awesome. I love Stephanie so much. So up next, okay, we have an amazing speaker. Thomas, where are you? Okay, so come on up, Thomas. And I met Thomas in Switzerland in biofabbing, and you know, we sat down and we got on a park bench and we were chatting. And Thomas looked at me and he said, you know, I don't know about the maker movement. He's like, the maker movement, I think, you know, has some problems, and we need to kind of think about that, you know, from a colonial perspective, from an imperialism perspective. And you know, I really appreciated so much your opinion and your perspective. And thank you so much for being here. I saw, on the Facebook group. If you're not on the Facebook group, just join that or get somebody to invite you. Thomas just shared his paper and also all of his slides from his talk today. So please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Thomas from Cameroon.
Okay. I begin by one question for all of you. Does biohacking still meet native and core values of the hacker movement? That is a very big question now. But I don't want to enter in deeply in the critiques of the hacker movement or the maker movement. But initially, that is the lexical field related to hacker ethics. You have subversion, you have free culture, you have openness, you have anti-capitalism, you have common citizen participation, and many things related to that. In your mind, in your thought, do you think that now the hacker movement or biohacking follow these streams? That is the question for all of us. We will discuss about it during our conference on Sunday too. But regarding to Africa, because I speak here with the African perspective, my African views, even if I am well trained in Western context, but I speak with my African perspective. That is the cardiopad. The cardiopad is Cameroonian invent this cardiopad to help our health system in Cameroon, in rural zone. And I put this image, this picture there just to say you that there is also biohackers in Cameroon, and they are trying to replicate what we are doing there. They are trying to follow the whole stream of the hacker movement or maker movement. But the question is that biohacking is very good, but does it reflect the needs of African people, or only the idea of one individual who think that this idea or this project can be good for my people? Which approach is better for our society? I know that, we know that biohacking has many advantages everywhere in the world. But in Africa particularly, is subject of critique. My last paper mentioned above is very critical about that, and deeply you can take information there. But the three great critics done about the biohacking movement in Africa is sustainability of the biohacker space, because lack of funding, even to get the material in our context is very difficult, and it's very expensive to get this material there. Capitalism instead of alternative economics based on commons, and inequality and exclusion, because biohacking in Africa, in Africa is very elitist. It's just for academics, and many people involved there are men. There are not a lot of women in this movement. But my focus in this talk is to fix, related to the topic of the session, is to fix the last critique, inequality and exclusion. So the idea is to rethink the African approach of biohacking, because biohacking is a great chance for Africa, but done like that is not relevant. It will not work in our context. And since many people try to replicate what is done in Western context in Africa, it will not work. But we are assuming that technology is driven by human, and the most important thing in the movement is the community. So please. Okay. The most important thing is a community, and biohacking, in my context, I don't know about your context, but in my context, is losing much of its potential by not actually including a citizen in the movement. So what can we do to rethink biohacking in African context, contribute to cognitive justice by merging biohackerspace with science shop? Because biohackerspace initially as they're existing here cannot really be relevant in my context. So we develop a model to merge biohackerspace with science shop. Where you are hearing about science shop is not a structure where you have to deal with money or something like this. Science shop is a structure mediating citizen, society, and society and science. And to get more, I forgot to put the link in there, but to get more to know more about Science Shop, you can find the Living Knowledge Foundation based in Amsterdam, which is the global network of Science Shop. So the Science Shop is a structure that brings science close to society. And the idea there is to hear about local needs, social local needs. So the needs should come from the grassroots, not from the top. Not that I am a biochemist, I am a scientist, so I know what is your problem, I know how to solve your problem. That is the solution. That is not the way to do citizen science. The better way to do, in my concept, is to hear about people, about local population, to try to solve their problem. And this is a very big challenge for academics because they should be trained. Education to citizen science for you, for me, for all academicians is very important in order for us to go out, to come out from our ivory tool. And another thing is that for the movement to be very impactful, it should not be located in academic, because in my context, university is like a barrier for other people. And when you put something, even if it's for citizen or for population, they cannot get into because it is in university. And this approach promotes inclusivity by recognizing the relevance of local knowledge and is open to non-scientific. This conversation is very important because even you as scientists, as academicians, when you are, because when you are lacking innovation or you don't have innovation, when you are hearing about other people or local population, what they are trying to solve, you can get innovation by assuming that innovation is what you are doing and using what you are doing is useful for local population, not only for you. And in this way, biohacking can contribute to the advent of cognitive justice, because in my title I talk about justice. Justice here is cognitive justice. Cognitive justice is a concept coming from India with Shiv Viswanathan. And the whole idea behind the cognitive justice is that all knowledge are equals. All knowledge are equals. It's not that because you are from university or something, some school, or this one is not from university, that your knowledge is better than its knowledge, And the second way is do better with less by promoting frugal innovation. Frugal innovation in French is, in my context, in French, we talk about débrouillardise, promouvoir la débrouillardise. Since we don't have a lot of material, of technological material in our context, instead to try to import or to buy sometimes some stuff very expensive for us, we have to empower biohacker to use local resources to do something in such a way that when you build your stuff or your prototypes and people can remake and reproduce the same prototype after you, even if you are not there. That is very different way to do science. That is why frugal innovation is relevant for our context. And the idea of development here is local sustainable development. Development for us, for Project SOA, is not to fit or to attempt like a standard of development as present by the great organism or international organism. The local development for us is to meet social needs. What you are doing should meet social needs. That is the idea of the local development. And citizen science and science shop allow us to propose or to suggest sustainable and recyclable solutions from our immediate context. I want to invite you again to join our conference on Sunday between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. You can discuss deeply about this topic, and this is like an indicative bibliography that you can use if you want to get more about that. Thank you.
One more time for Thomas, everybody. Yeah, Thomas. Woo! Thank you. Okay, so the final speaker for our session, the final presenter for our session, I want to invite to the stage Alicia Wooten and also Nancy and Aaron. Okay, so come on up and I'll say a little bit more as you come. So again in the U.S., right? We've got President 45, and there was a series of marches for science, right? Because there are certain people in the U.S. that have a pretty antagonistic views towards science at the moment, and so we held this. A march in Boston, a March for Science in Boston, which was a really, really wonderful event. Joey Ito spoke at the event, George Church did, and also one of the main presenters was Alicia Wooten. And how many were at the March for Science in Boston? I'm curious. A few of you, okay. So Alicia was just, I was so inspired watching Alicia present. And one of the things that I was really excited about having Alicia join us for was to talk more deeply about accessibility, right? Because I think for all of us, we're interested in accessibility. We want biotech and bio for everyone. But I think even when you think you have an idea around accessibility and inclusion, I think Alicia really will help challenge us to think about our notions of what accessibility really means, right? Even just in kind of our conversation earlier today, I was asking her, Alicia, I said, well, should I introduce you as a speaker or a presenter, right? These are all really subtle things, but I think really impact how our brain is wired. It's like in the U.S. we say things like, "Hey, you guys," right? And it automatically kind of builds in certain notions of gender, and you do it really unconsciously. So Alicia said, "Oh yeah, actually, you should introduce me as a presenter, not a speaker." And I said, "Okay, that makes a lot of sense." So so Alicia, thank you so much for being here and for helping us think more deeply about accessibility and inclusion. Oh, and I should say too, Alicia is also doing her PhD in biomedical science at Boston University, so she's a big bio nerd, just like all of us. And yeah, so Alicia, thank you so much again for being here. A round of applause, please, for Alicia Wooten. Thank you.
Testing? Okay. Hello, hi. My name is Alicia Wooten, and I am standing here in front of you today as a scientist. So I will be asking a few questions to the audience. I'd like you to raise your hand if you feel the same way. So the first question for you is, do you ever feel like you go up to a group of friends who are laughing and then you've missed the punchline? How many of you have experienced this? Quite a few. Do you ever feel like you need to please people, and at the end of the day, you're just exhausted? Do you feel like even when you are surrounded by people, you still feel lonely? So some of you, yeah. That's how I and many other people feel every day. We are dealing with these feelings and emotions while trying to work and succeed in our careers. Back in August, I went to an international deaf academics conference and presented about my experiences in a hearing world in a hearing research lab. I met 15 to 20 other deaf academics in physics, chemistry, engineering, coding, and science. We would all gather together and talk about our experiences and our feelings. The more we talked, the more we realized that we all felt the same way. And you know how we felt? We felt like we needed to prove ourselves worthy of being there in the first place, before we could even focus on our work. We all wanted to make a difference in our respective fields, but we had to beat others' doubts and obstacles before we could even think about making a difference. Some of the obstacles we face is inaccessible materials like videos that are not captioned, coordinating interpreters, paving the way for future generations. Every day, those with hearing loss and other disabilities face serious challenges in the STEM field. How many of you here today have worked with someone with a disability of any kind? I want to see a show of hands. Okay, wow, that's quite a few people. I'm impressed. Now, if you've raised your hand, please leave it raised. Keep them up. Now, how many of you know what that person with a disability needs from you and from others? And if you do know, yes, like I said, please leave your hand down. And if you don't, you can take them down. And how many of you have asked that person specifically, what do you need from me? Wow, I am impressed. There's so many of you here. And that's actually incredibly rare. I tend to find myself explaining, I need this, that, and the other. Hey, would you mind helping me with this? And the fact that you guys are already willing to ask that person directly is incredibly important. That really has helped them feel included. So those of us with disabilities wake up every day knowing that we will have to work a little bit harder to communicate with others. For example, in my experience, when I join a new research lab, I have to make the extra effort to talk with those in the lab to help them feel comfortable communicating with me. I once had a PI who would turn the other way when he saw me coming because he wasn't sure how to interact with me. I wonder if others will trust me to help them with their experiments as they've helped me. I've experienced lab meetings where multiple people would talk over each other and the sign language interpreters were unable to keep up. And when they were asked to repeat themselves, they would simply say, never mind. It wasn't important. But it also is important to remember that my experiences are not all negative. The smallest things make a huge difference and propel me to keep coming into the lab and going for my goal. It is that one lab member who took the time to learn a few signs in ASL, such as good morning, how are you, what experiments are you doing today, that really make my day much more encouraging. I have a lab group that will make sure that I have the appropriate interpreters at every lab meeting. It is that one friend who's patient enough to find a new way to communicate with me one-on-one. And I'd like to ask all of you right now, for example, what is your preferred learning style? You right there. So you prefer doing. Okay, so you're a more doing sort of learner. So now your learning style, could that possibly apply to, say, this person over here, their learning style? Probably not. Probably not, right? My point being that it's important to remember that every person has different needs. But that does not make you any less of a person. The needs that I have as a deaf person could be a little different than another deaf person would have in a lab. You know, say for example, someone in a wheelchair, you might not know specifically what that person needs. It's important to understand that a person's disability does not define them, but it is also an important part of their lives. If there's one thing that I love, it's when people ask me questions. It doesn't matter how silly you may think it is. You will learn more than most people. Be careful how you introduce a person. I am not a deaf person. I am a scientist who is deaf. Be aware of how you refer to people makes you more inclusive, and only acknowledge the disability when it's necessary. And don't be afraid of disability. Ask us questions. As soon as you drop that fear, you turn disability into ability. It's important to remember that those with a disability don't have the same opportunities as others. They may not have the same qualifications as others, but it's important to give them a chance. With the right mentor, you can help them grow and succeed. Every day we get pushed down, and what we need is someone to give us a chance to let us cultivate our potential. We grew up with a unique perspective, and that perspective might be the last key to solving your puzzle. When you go back to your community labs, make sure that you make it clear that people of all backgrounds are welcome, that you will try your best to accommodate them. If you get a deaf person, be ready to find out how to get an interpreter or find other ways to communicate. If someone asks if the lab is wheelchair accessible, know what works and what doesn't. Are you willing to make sure a space is consistent for a blind scientist so they may come in and know where everything is? We tend to categorize all disability into one group. And it's important that we are all aware that needs are different. Recently, a friend of mine who is deaf just started a master's program, had a really interesting first week of class. A professor was giving a talk about accessibility in the workplace, and another student in the class raised their hand and asked, "What about blind people?" And the professor said, "Oh, that's a good question. I'm not really sure." The professor then looked at my deaf friend and said, "Do you know what you would do for a blind person?" And my friend looked at the professor and said, "I'm not blind." It makes you wonder, what does accessibility really mean for a group of disabled people? What does it mean for a specific disability? And what does it mean for a specific individual? There is no one size fits all. And part of our job is to take a step back and think about all the layers that are involved. And once we start to do that, that's when we become more inclusive. So now I would like you in the audience to take a few minutes and think about your biggest personal challenge in your job, in your workplace, and how your colleagues could help you, how you could help them. So what is something that you need from that would help you in your workplace, that would help you become more successful? It could be something maybe simple about your learning style. Maybe you're the type of person who needs to get up, move around every 20 minutes. You can't sit down for a long time. Or, maybe, you found someone in your office for a few minutes. And so what I would like you to do is talk with people at your tables, come up with a few challenges and a few potential solutions, and then I'd like you to share them with the group afterwards. So go ahead. So we're not actually finished. This is a quick 5-minute break. This is just an opportunity where I'd like you guys to share your personal challenges and discuss possible solutions to those challenges. So we'll just take a couple minutes, and then maybe people can shout out what they talked about at their tables. So there's a few other things afterwards I'd like to discuss.
Okay. Let's take a few minutes, okay? Thank you, everybody.
The idea is what are our challenges in the workplace?
One of my challenges is really crafting a documentation for documentation work. And it should, you have to do it, especially if you so this pile of paper, everything in. And I didn't find it so good.
I feel like I find one of these who doesn't
Test.
So you're all talking about challenges that you experience in the workplace and how your needs can be addressed. Great.
You'll be accepted, you guys. It's just a matter of having to work
harder,
So how are we doing?
So how is everybody doing? I think we're having a good conversation. So it's good.
I'll do it. Okay, how's everyone doing? Does anybody from... Hey guys. Hello? Hello? Let's come back. Hello? 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 Okay. So now in deaf culture, if everyone is talking like this, what we tend to do is put our hands on our head, because that means that you have to pay attention, you have to stop talking. See? You guys can copy me and do this? Good, nice, okay. All right, great. All right, does anyone have anything that they would like to share from their discussions about their challenges and ways that they could help improve their life? Maybe just one thing would be great. Come on. Okay, we got one over here.
Just to get the conversation started, I was working with a gentleman who had very severe Down syndrome, and I had no idea how to work with him because I'd never experienced that. I was kind of scared. I was like, okay, he's different, and that's really weird for me. And the first few times we spoke with each other, I was definitely not myself. And then after a while, like we had a couple lunches, I just got to know him, and we became good mates, and it was that simple. Everything changed just because I realized he was pretty much exactly the same as me. He was just a normal person. And as soon as I warmed up to him, he was never strange with me either, and we became, pretty close.
Nice. I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing. Others? Okay, in the back.
I want to say two general things that came up at our table. One was, the first thing was that there's not the context to have these conversations in most organizations or workplace. That was the first issue. And then the second issue was the issue of trust. Trust both in terms of saying it while you're saying it, and then the issue of trust after you've said it and you've, in a sense, exposed yourself. I thought that was really beautiful, the person that said that at our table.
Wow, yeah, thank you. So really the point, I think do we have time for one more? One more.
Thank you. So we got into a cool conversation about different learning styles at our table, and a few of us mentioned that it becomes difficult in terms of different ways that we're learning. Like for me personally, I need to see things visually drawn out. Like if someone verbally tells me like steps or something, it does not stick. And so usually I've learned, and I picked up this skill in school to ask people to like stop and like draw it or visually map it out. And that seemed to be a similar thing that some of the people at the table needed as well. So
Great, thank you. So, I mean, really, my point is that I wanted to show you that everyone has different needs, right? It's not that everybody has a disability, right? I mean, it's not that everyone has a disability, or if you do have one, you still have needs, right? So it's important that we look from other perspectives, and that will make us better scientists. We need to see that everyone is an equal partner. It is also important to realize that disability is relative. We are comparing how different we are from other people. And that comparison is futile, as each individual is unique, and the comparison is useless. When I encounter a situation where my deafness is an obstacle, I know now it's not because I'm deaf, but because the society limits me from achieving my fullest potential. We are not disabled. We are humans with different abilities. Because we are disabled in the eyes of society, they put us in a position that does not allow us to achieve equality. Once we remove our limiting beliefs and encourage the society to change its archaic view to one where we are all equal beings with a unique set of abilities, we can create a community where that concept of normal is non-existent. Science is heterosectional. Science is heterogeneous. Contributions from different people with different perspectives expand our thought processes and lead to amazing discoveries. We are all the same with one common goal in mind. And it's time we recognize our differences and make them pillars of our community. Thank you.
Before you go, can you teach us how to sign "Thank you, you're awesome"? Okay, group activity.
So this is thank you. Thank you. Now you guys do it. This is awesome. So there's many ways to say that. You could say, you're awesome. Or you could say awesome. Or you could say, you're awesome. Make sure you've got the facial expressions in there, right? You're awesome. Make sure you're showing it with your face. That's important.
Okay, can we all do that to Alicia now? Ready? Okay, so here we go. Everybody together. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Yeah,
You're
awesome. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, guys, thank you so much. That was so great. Okay, so we're gonna shift gears, and I apologize again. This whole part of the schedule is a bit packed, so we're gonna just move quickly. So up next, we have a really, really wonderful panel to kick off a session on accessible innovation. Okay, and so panelists, you guys know who you are. Can you all please start heading towards the stage, and I will slowly introduce you as you walk up. So moderating this panel is going to be the homie Kevin Chen from Montreal, BrickoBio, and many other DIY bio awesome things, Hyacinth Bio. Yeah, grab a seat. You can choose whichever one you want. So a round of applause for Kevin, please. Kevin Chen. I'll give you my mic, Kevin. And then we also have Julie Legault. Everybody make some noise for Julie. Julie from Amino Labs. And then we have Bethan Wolfenden from, of course, Bento Lab. And of course, Bethan has a Bento Lab in her hand. So everybody, some noise for Bethan, please. And then finally, the K9 himself, Will K9 from Oventrons. Everybody, round of applause for Will K9. And so I think there's some slides. So just let Peter know. Actually, should I give you, I think I've got the controller. So this, oh, I don't have the controller. Anyways, oh, podium.
So I thought I would open this panel with just a short story. But first of all, how many of you guys have built your own lab equipment? Like at least one piece at some point? Yeah, most of you guys. Yeah. You can put water into a bowl and then it becomes an incubator if you heat it up, right? Something like that. Yeah, we've all been there, I think, in building our labs. And so this panel is about, I think, why do we build our own tools and what comes after that. And we have 3 amazing panelists who have all built companies that do this kind of stuff. But let's just say that I made a rule at one point that I'm not going to take any lab junk unless it fits in the back of a tiny smart car. And so at one point I bought this incubator or let's say it's a good friend of mine that bought this incubator, and we managed to just barely fit it into the smart car and where the driver's chest is kind of like 2 inches from the steering wheel. And I'm not going to say what happened after this, but everybody was fine and the incubator's in our lab, and let's just leave it at that. But the question is, why are tools so expensive? Why are they so big and why are they so heavy? All you need to do is keep something at a certain temperature, and do we want to find things that are better? And so with me today, I have Julie from Amino, Will from Oventrons, and Bethan from Bento Lab, whom I've known all of you guys for maybe at least a year or 2 now, or something like that. But since you almost started your companies, and they're all doing amazing things to build and invent new tools and make those available to people like you. So why don't we start with Julie, and you can tell us where you're from and what Amino does.
Sure. So is this on? Yeah. Okay, I'm also from Montreal, so that's how
Yeah,
we met.
Montreal.
But my background is in design, so human-centered design and Fab Labs. So I was here at the Media Lab when I actually met David Kong, and I'll just tell you the story of how Amino got started. So we do education tools and lab equipment for beginners that grow with you as your skill grows. And so my background is obviously not in science. That's why we focus on beginners, because I really understand it. And so I met David Kong when I was doing research into how to produce smells. So I wanted to produce hormonally reactive smells for autistic children. And which led us to bioequipment. And so David Kong was teaching a course called Microfluidics for Synthetic Biology, and to be quite honest, I didn't know what synthetic biology really was, but I was really into the microfluidics, so I took this course, and then obviously it was amazing. And David was there talking to us about it, and Natalie Caldell, who you'll meet tomorrow, she has the BioBuilder Foundation. She's an amazing woman and very patient with beginners, and she was telling us how perfumes could be made using synthetic biology. So I was like, all right, this is so much better than my spring necklace. That was a bad idea. Let's move on to synthetic biology. And so through that, I met Justin, who gave us a workshop at Joey's house, which I think you saw the kitchen biohacking earlier this morning.
I was there at that one, I think, as well.
Yeah, so yeah.
Fun time, yeah.
So that's how we all came together. And then that was my first experience where I really understood what genetic engineering was. And so we made a DNA plasmid, and it was violescent, which is an anti-cancer compound, but it's also super beautiful purple. And so from not having really done any science to creating my own organism that was producing this super cool drug and also super cool color, I was like, holy hell, this is amazing. I am now a scientist. Then I went into a lab, and heck no, I'm not a scientist. It's really scary in there. If you're a beginner, I was in the EHS lab at MIT, so it was a lot of experiments from actual scientists working on really important things that I didn't feel like I should disrupt. And yeah, so it was really scary. There was a barrier in terms of equipment, but also in terms of knowledge. Reading textbooks is not something that really helps me understand what's going on. So a lot of videos, a lot of chats with David, Justin, Natalie, and I kept going back to this idea that this first experience I had building that purple bacteria was really what changed my view of GMOs and of science, of how accessible science could be. But I was in a really super fortunate place, like at the right time. And so it really came about giving that one experience, that first experience, in a way that's designed for non-scientists, for artists, for designers, for parents, to really get going into the space, and then from there grow their experience in all sorts of ways, but really grow their knowledge and feel comfortable participating in conversation about synthetic biology, genetic engineering, but also creating their own things from bacteria.
And so, Amino, you have an incubator, and you also have
Yes.
some kits that let you transform bacteria, and it all looks very nice. I think it's
Yeah,
very
it's
pretty. I
really
think
beautiful.
Some of the prettiest stuff that's out there. You guys have pretty instruments too, but Will, go ahead. You can tell us about Opentrons.
Hello, I'm Will. So Opentrons makes pipetting robots. They're fully open source. They cost $3,000. We got our start at GenSpace. My background is actually in political campaign management, actually. Really what happened was I got to the point where I got really frustrated at sort of the top-down, centralized political organizing model, and that was at the time when the quote-unquote Twitter revolutions were happening in like the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Egypt, etc. And my analysis was basically, wow, these people used to take from the centralized government the news, right? The government would create the news for people, and now they have Twitter, so they're creating news for themselves, and that had literally revolutionary implications. And I was like, okay, quit the campaign stuff, stop with this top-down, and I started diving into technology. I was in Seattle at the time and moved actually to New York for what became Occupy Wall Street, and stayed for really for GenSpace, and started pipetting. And I was doing a lot of 3D printing at the time, and I was like, why can't I download this protocol and hit run like I can on my 3D printer? Like, why do I have to learn this pipetting technique in order to realize my dreams as a future biologist? And that was really the inspiration for Opentrons. And now we're in 350 plus labs in 38 countries around the world, venture-backed, around 30 people in Brooklyn and in Shenzhen, China. And yeah, I've been so inspired to hear the stories of you all today, and just to think about how as Opentrons continues to grow and this movement continues to grow, how we can really help empower the type of projects and the connectivity in this community. So
yeah. And how much does a liquid handling robot normally cost?
The next cheapest one is around $30,000, so about 10 times more expensive.
And these go up to like hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're looking for higher end systems. But I think it's important to note that as like, you know, it's really cost prohibitive to do lab automation, which, I mean, it's not even that complex of a machine to build. So it makes perfect sense. Beth, your turn.
Hey. So when I was 15, I was kind of totally obsessed with Jay Kiesling, who's this synthetic biologist in California. And he's essentially making drugs a lot cheaper by using synthetic biology. And actually, I think I heard about iGEM at around the same time, the student competition for synthetic biology, but it took me about another 6 years to take part in that. And even when I did, I was a first-year undergrad. I felt really kind of nervous. I didn't actually get into the lab that much. I had ended up doing all of the other kind of stuff that you do when you're part of an iGEM team. And then iGEM finished, and it had been this really amazing, empowering summer where we'd tried to design this organism, and we'd come up with this scientific idea and plan that when you spoke to, you know, tenured professors, they were like, "Ooh, that's cool." And me and Philip, who also works on Bentolab with me, we didn't want iGEM to end. We didn't want to stop being in the lab. We came to university to start doing stuff, to start getting our hands dirty, and we didn't want to be kicked back into just going to class. And we ended up joining the local DIY biolab, and actually getting sucked into the kind of DIY bio community in Europe. Now, 6 years ago, the London biohack space was not the space that it is today. It was a lot more computer software engineers, and they'd kind of hang around and talk cool about like, oh yeah, like what's the meaning of life and how would you change that with synthetic biology? And again, it was just, it was one of those places where I'd go along, and I was the only woman in the room. I was one of the youngest people there. It was in this grungy little closet in a hackerspace, and everyone was like, you know, I'm doing my independent project. And it was like I desperately wanted to be there, and at the same time, it was just like so nerve-wracking to be there. And the DIY Bio Europe community was actually not. And I've kind of got to thank some of the people, Thomas, Melde, JJ, some of the people that I met there for keeping me part of DIY Bio. A bit of a long story, but essentially that led to me thinking, gosh, you've got to be able to get a hold of this equipment outside of a DIY biolab. Like, because if I could, and I'm not going to build it because I'm not an engineer, I just want to buy this shit and get started. Like, I can't be bothered with the people, I can't be bothered with building it. And that's sort of how Bentolab came out. And now we're thinking a lot more, okay, so hardware is one thing, but then there's all the knowledge, and there's the kits, and there's doing stuff. And I'm really excited for how the DIY Bio community is growing. I think there's so much more to do and to make it open and accessible and bring people in. But it's advanced so much since I joined, and I was like running away from those awkward software engineers.
Yeah. So the Bentolab is a gel box and a PCR machine and a centrifuge, and you've got one right here, right? You can hold it up. Yes, cool. And you guys are all three of you doing workshops later, so you can all get a chance to sit down and look at the machines and see what they've got, and it's all very, very cool stuff. So I've got a couple questions ready, and I'm hoping we have time for at least maybe one or two questions from the audience as well. But my first and main question, which I think is important for all of you guys, is what are you guys looking for from this community? Like, as people who have come up from the biohacker, like we've got Media Lab, iGEM, GenSpace. I know that you've already done your beta testing. I was part of your beta testing program, so I've helped there, and I've known you guys for a little while and tested out your previous versions of various kits. I haven't yet to buy an Opentrons yet, but it's on my list. It's on my Christmas wish list. It'll come soon. But yeah, what do you guys want from the community that is around you, that is supporting your goals of making better tools that we can also use? Because I want better tools, so how do I get you to make better tools that I can use so that I can do more stuff?
I think for us right now, we're looking more as how we can work together as a community. So make sure that because we're all working on kits, and a lot of investors are asking us, but what about Bento? Aren't they your enemies? It's like, no, first of all, it doesn't work the same way. Second of all, there's like 5 companies, we're all friends. Let's stay friends. But so one thing we really want to do is make sure that everyone works together so that all the machines and all the kits and everything is interchangeable, because we think it's really important. So we're already talking with the Seattle space and a space in Austin about how they can create kits that are used on our machines, and then we revenue share if we build them or you guys build them, and so that it's a complete ecosystem. So it's not that we're looking necessarily, well, we are looking for more experiences so that the 6-year-old that use our kits have more than colors to play with. So for that, but also to build the knowledge and bring it outside and grow the community to a place where you don't have to necessarily be in a biospace, because I know we always get emails from people that aren't near a community lab and they're looking to start one, but it's also very hard to start one, as you guys know. So how do we make sure that it can grow beyond the physical space?
Yeah. So share your stories, share your knowledge, and don't worry about competition. And the investor thing, we might do another unconference panel on startups and investing stuff, and that's its own ball game. But Will.
I would say I really liked what was said earlier about how are you going to serve a community unless you know what the community wants. And I really think OpenTrons was born from this idea of like creating tools that would help everyone in this room and in all the rooms that you all will go back home and be in, and demand something from us, right? Like we're here from this movement, part of this movement, and I would love to continue to give back to this movement. I think another thing that I just want to put a plug for is I think projects that come out of a community lab that make money should give money back to the community lab. That should be a thing that we all here say we're due. And demand that of companies that come out of your labs. But I think also there's some amazing technology being built by people in this room that's like far away. We didn't make anything new. OpenTrons didn't. There had been pipetting robots before. We made them cheaper. But there are people out here who are making really new things, and I again would ask of you to like make that company, make it real, and bring it out, and so that it can be shared. So that's what I got.
Cool. So you're sponsoring next year's summit, right? Is that at the?
Dude, if we get there, sell 1 million robots.
Okay,
we'll sponsor the summit.
I'll see what. Yeah.
I guess there's 2 aspects in terms of what we could ask for from the community. One is to give us very honest feedback on the hardware, and to tell us what doesn't work so that we can make it better. But I think one of the things that got us started on building Bento Lab in the first place was that what we were looking for actually was like a 101 DIY bio experience, really well-documented projects that would exist out there that we could do on the equipment that was in the biolab. And I think that's still something that is maybe still nascent. Like the biolab in London as well, there's been loads of awesome projects that just haven't got very well documented or been shared, and then they've just kind of, drifted off into the abyss of non-existence. And so that's kind of one thing that I'd want from the community is when you use when you use the hardware that we're building or the hardware that any of us are building, is really share and document the projects that you're doing with that so that other people can have a go as well and build on that.
Awesome. That's great. So use their tools, share, provide feedback, and be collaborative. Don't be competitive, I guess. So I guess I have one more question, super quick, and then can we take one question from the audience? Are we good for? Okay, awesome. So for the people that have invented their first piece of lab equipment, maybe it's not something super special, or maybe it could be something special one day. What's your first tip, next step? All right, I've got my thingy. Should I post it online, or should I tell a friend about it? Should I write an email to you guys saying hey, I've got this great idea, give me some advice, or what's your tips? And maybe one tip each.
I guess it depends where you want to take it. If you want to commercialize it, I would say test it with real people as soon as possible. What we're selling now is definitely not what I made up in my thesis. Not even close. And so because we tested with a lot of people, and I think you guys did the same, and it's not about, in the end, it's not about what you want. Well, it's a little bit about what you want, but it's mostly what the people, the beginners that are gonna use your machine, what they'll want. So I guess if you're commercializing, test it with people.
Yeah, I would just double down on that theme of really know what you want to get out of it. If you want to start a company that is amazing, it's going to take 110% of your life for the next 5 years, know that. If you don't want to create a company, that is fine too. Put up, a great blog online and call it success. Like I think that the key thing is to know, in your heart, what do you want to do with this thing, and hit that out of the park. And I'm here. I would love to support anyone at any of those stages. And I think that all of us sort of have an angle where we've sort of figured out manufacturing, we've figured out marketing, and so as an open source company, we have started working with people who've developed other open source things to help them bring it to market, and we're happy to share revenue, obviously, with the people that do that. So I think that there are also sort of hybrid collaborations that are possible, but I think that this is probably the most important choice. What do you want to do? And then how do you do that becomes the next question, but you got to have a good answer to the first one first.
That's good.
I was thinking, my first thought was don't do a Kickstarter.
Yeah,
agree.
that was
Don't do
my
that.
third question, but I think we have time for that
Or
later.
if you
maybe.
do, come find the people that have done one and get their advice first. But secondly, I was thinking that Philip and I both had this idea of what we wanted the company to be, what we thought the need was. And at some point, that's going to diverge. You test it, and you realize that actually there's a couple of different opportunities, and maybe one is closer to my heart, but it doesn't make as much sense. And I think that actually, potentially, that leads you away from the community that you started out with. So figuring out very early on whether or not what you actually want to spend your time doing matches the expectation of what you want to achieve and build, that castle of dreams, or whether maybe you don't want to build a company that's going to be VC backed, you want to build a company that is going to have social change, and you're going to do that a different way. If you're going to commercialize it, is that actually what you're interested in, or do you want to build something different?
So we've got know what your customers want, share it with your customers, know what you want, make sure that you're on the right track in building a company, and then you're kind of in between, your expectations might change, I guess.
Pick a focus.
Yeah.
Pick one thing.
And be ready for it to change, because that's what happens.
Amazing. Okay, so super good advice. So let's get one question from the audience.
Just before, do you have any advice, Kevin? Because you also have a startup.
Yes, I do. I think those are all great points. I can't really, we're not really in hardware. We can't really just sell products, and so we have a different story going on with us. But it is, very much know what you want. Startups are hard, but if you want to learn how to do that, then definitely be courageous, I think, is my point is be brave, get into it. If it fails, then it fails, and you go back to your day job, which is maybe still pretty good if you're teaching kids how to do biology or something. So that's my tip. Thanks. Anyways, question from the audience, or are we time-wise?
I actually apologize.
Okay, cool.
But let's do this, because you all have workshops that are happening, okay? So J Squared is doing an amino workshop today, and I think we're going to kick that off about 3. I'll make an announcement on
3.
Stage. Yeah, when that's going to happen. And then, Will, when is your Opentrons workshop?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon. And then, Bethan, when's yours?
Tomorrow lunchtime.
Tomorrow lunchtime. Okay, so I think, or I hope my sister sent out an email via the Google Groups with the whole workshop schedule. Did that happen? I'm not sure if that did. But if it didn't, I'll make sure it gets sent out in the next 10 minutes or so. So just double check that list. The whole sign up is already on there. And again, if you just search through your email, it was in the subject almost there. Okay, that was the email that I sent the list out in. Okay, so just double check that, and you can look for the signups. And go for it.
One more quick thing that I wanted to do before we end up. There's a bunch of other companies I know in the audience who also have built their own tools, and I wanted to give you guys a quick shout out. So I guess there's DigiBio, which I know you guys are here. Is Federico? Are you guys gonna? I don't know if they're doing anything, or Okay, maybe they're not. They're around. I've seen them here today. Orkin with the BioRealizer, you can wave and so go ask Orkin about his device because it's also very, very cool and amazing. Is there anyone else that has a cool tool that they've invented and they want to share it? Not yet. Oh, we got one more. Do you want to just shout it and what's your thing?
It's basically open science equipment, but for the Latin American environment.
Okay, cool. Latin American environment, open science equipment is that guy. What's your name? Ricardo. Okay, cool. You can go talk to him. All right, that's all. I'm done.
What's that? Tina?
Oh, we had one more. Oh.
If anybody brought some hardware or something else they would like to show off, we made a table in Lysosome where you can put some things on display. I have one of our DIY syringe pumps on there as well.
So Lysosome, there's a table for hardware, so you can put stuff there, and it'll be amazing. And anything. Okay, cool. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Patrick.
And remember also
and we had one more.
The nucleus has a huge space. If you actually want to operate the hardware and get stuff messy, you can do that in the nucleus. Not bio stuff, but hardware stuff you can. Sorry, the bio stuff has to go in the wet lab. But
okay.
Okay.
And now we can hustle, or we've got one more as we're walking off.
Conservation X Labs, we're making a handheld DNA barcode scanner to help fight wildlife trafficking.
Cool. Handheld DNA barcode scanner for wildlife tracking. Trafficking. Sorry, yeah. Not trafficking.
We're preventing
trafficking. Yeah. To prevent trafficking. Sorry, yeah.
Tracking
I guess
good,
it could be used either way,
bad.
maybe, but I don't know. Yeah. So
everybody, big round of applause for Kevin and Julie and Will and Bethany. Awesome. Kevin, fantastic moderating, dude. That was so great. Okay, so I'm going to invite up our next speakers. So we have coming on stage, please welcome Fernand Federici and Jenny Malloy. Are you all here? Okay, there's Jenny. And where's Fernand? Coming. Okay, and they're going to speak to us about cell-free synbio. I personally think cell-free synthetic biology is one of the hugest areas. So really, really excited to hear about OpenPlant and your work. So can we have a warm ovation to welcome Jenny and Fernand, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I introduced myself in Hello World. Earlier, I'm Jenny Malloy. I work at the University of Cambridge, and one of my roles is to coordinate OpenPlant. So we are mostly working on enabling technologies for plant synthetic biology. But recently, quite a few people involved in OpenPlant, including Fernand Federici, who's based in Chile but collaborates with us very closely and will be speaking shortly. We've got very interested in cell-free synthetic biology. For those who are not familiar, it's basically taking the insides of cells to make an extract and then putting in your DNA to be transcribed and translated in that system, so also known as in vitro synthetic biology. And it takes away a lot of the time and complexity from expressing DNA, basically because you're not using living things. And we think this has got some really exciting research possibilities, but also for community labs, and particularly for those of us who are outside of the US and have more stringent regulations around genetic modification. This enables you to prototype genetic circuits, to prototype metabolic pathways, to prototype DNA that does not require a GMO. So your cell-free system is not an organism, and therefore you can work with it in a lab that is not certified for genetic modification. So this opens up a bunch of possibilities, and we also feel that although it's not quite there yet, it could be so much cheaper and so much easier to do than it actually is. So OpenPlant convened a group of people in Cambridge on the 27th of July. This followed on from some work we'd already been doing between the UK, Chile, and more broadly Latin America and South Africa. But we've kind of broadened out, and we'd love to broaden out even further. So we're in the very early days of this, and we would love to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and any contributions. So what's the idea? We would like to create an open source curriculum for cell-free synthetic biology, where we kind of link in a biology curriculum that could be used maybe in schools, maybe in universities, and also very much in community labs. What are the biological principles that these types of organizations are trying to teach? And can we get a really kind of nice, modular, open source set of teaching resources? Not only the kind of teaching resources in terms of handouts, presentation slides, whatever that you can modify for your own purposes, but also extracts, DNA, protocols, hardware, software, an entire stack of open source curriculum tools for cell-free synthetic biology. So it's very much focused in the first instance on the education space, but as mentioned, there are sort of myriad possibilities for research with these systems as well. And so far, we've held, as I mentioned, one meeting in July. We had many people who attended, many people who could not attend. These are just a small number of the organizations who had some representation there, either with someone appearing in person or commenting on the reports, which we're still working on, and we will share openly as soon as possible. And I'll hand over to Fernand to talk a little bit about some of the technical aspects that have been going on this year.
Thank you. So something I would like to highlight, I'm not going to get into the technical part, I'm going to highlight the important things in the context of building a community. Some of them, the resources we have been working on. For example, this one is a collection of protocols to make your own cell-free extracts without having to rely on refrigerated resources that come from the US. You know, it's very expensive to ship these materials. And an important point to highlight there is that being in academia and doing this type of work with, in this case, Aníbal Arce is the student that did this, often you don't have incentives or rewards for doing this, because if you cannot publish something that this is a collection of already existing steps from different protocols, the work here was, the idea was to make it very, very cheap and possible to make it in Chile. As Thomas was describing, it's very important to be aware of your context. And there are no many rewards for that. You cannot publish a paper for doing this cheaply, which is orders of magnitude cheaper. The other thing was on working on DNA fabrication. What is the DNA that goes into these extracts? There are some technical improvements of this assembly method that we are working with, some people there, Bernardo Pollack and Jim Hasselhoff and others. But the important point here is using the OpenMTA for being able to transfer these materials outside academia. If you work of course, in the bio community, you know the problems of material transfer agreements. So this one will allow us to share this with our friends in, for example, the Open Bio Chile or the biohacking community or high schools, etc. Another interesting point is that has been mentioned many times here today is the use of open hardware for building our own equipment. And here I would like to highlight the collaboration we had along this when we were working on this project from, for example, IO Rodeo and FlyPy. FlyPy, André Chagas and Tom Baden and Lucia Prieto, they were working on an open source microscope, and we received a lot of input from them for our projects. So this is an example of what we can do with this type of microscopy compared to what you can do with a professional microscope. This is all raw images, there is no editing, but the most important part for us is being able to do capacity building and going to high schools and building the scopes and building the biology and working in the code. Something that was very important for this project was to work on the biology side to avoid any use of filtering systems and moving parts in a very light and cheap mainframe. So we were working with these 3 fluorescent proteins that I will put links at the end with all the documentation of the project. And this is the kind of experiments we were doing. It looks better in this screen, but anyway. So you can do, for example, cell-free time lapses and bacteria-to-bacteria communication, spatial assays, and of course, something that was very important for us is also the software and the community, working with community abroad on the code part, to have Jupyter notebooks for students to I don't know, pick colonies, analyze expression per colony, or if you're working with cell-free, analyzing expression dynamics and time series in your plates, and do some other experiments and document this project. And something that for us is super important is documentation. As it was mentioned many times today, documentation is very important for open source. It's not just being open, it's making this effort. We are learning a lot about this. Documenting your project is really tough and time consuming, and there are many challenges in documenting this. All of these resources I presented here are documented in, for example, DocuBricks for documenting open hardware and stating the rules of the game, all the licenses. Open Science Framework for all the DNA and all the images and everything, and how to access these resources through Adgin or Hackaday. I would like to finish with an invitation to I know there are so many people from Latin America to join the TechnoX community, how to apply open source technology to solve local problems in Latin America. Again, the issue of context and what is important for your community and what is important for your place, your region. And of course, GOSH, the Gathering for Open Science Hardware. Many people belong to that community. Many people who belong to that community are today here. I invite you to please check these two communities and contribute with your work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Renan. So we're very much at the beginning of a journey, and we hope you will join us. We really want to make cell-free synthetic biology as open source as possible, as distributable as possible, without cold chains and with room temperature storage and dry shipping. And we want to make it as absolutely cheap and accessible as possible for people outside of academia and industry, which is all of the people in this room. So we would really value your input, and we will, as soon as we have that report ready, be sharing it with this community. And yes, please contribute and beta test stuff and help. Thank you very much.
Wait, but before you guys go, are you also doing an unconference on cell-free systems?
We have a First Steps in Cell-Free Synthetic Biology practical workshop on Sunday. There is a waiting list in operation, but do add your name to it. We're going to be doing a really super simple experiment expressing GFP in cell-free systems and then imaging it using open hardware.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And I think Tim is here. Tim, I'm going to mispronounce your last name, from BioClub/Minnesota, who's also doing something on cell-free systems. But yeah, are you doing an unconference also on this, Tim?
Yes, an unconference.
Is it on the wall yet?
Not yet.
Okay, keep your eye out for that. It will emerge on the wall. Okay, so one more. Thank you so much again. One more round of applause, please, for Jenny and Fernand. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're just going to continue the avalanche of amazing tools. So I want to welcome next to the stage Nieves. So Nieves, we met in biofabbing out in Switzerland, and Nieves has such incredible energy and is really doing remarkable work with bioprinting. So and of course, since we're all hacking here, you're going to teach us how to build our own bioprinter. So everybody, please welcome Nieves.
Where is the... Okay, thank you. So, hello everybody. As I said before, I'm working in bioprinting, and today I want to tell you about how to build your own bioprinter, because it's not just for biology. It has a lot of potential in other fields, and in biology also can be used not just for bioprinting, but as pipetting, like the OpenTrons machine, okay? So if you want to build your own bioprinter, what do you need? I know more people in this room is working on bioprinting or has worked in some point of his life. So I just want to tell my experience in this area, because when you are starting in something that is not your expertise, I'm from industrial engineer and I didn't have any idea about biology. The first thing you need to make something like this is support. Support from your family, friends, people who can help you, because bioprinting is a very multidisciplinary field. So you need knowledge in mechanics, electronics, computer science, biology, materials. Okay, so first thing you need is support. It can come from your family, as I have said. I know my parents are following me in the streaming, so thank you. Also, when you are coming from a very known university, or you are in your own way, it's not easy to have help or institutional help. If you are from MIT, maybe it's easier because you say, I'm from MIT. But when you are not, it's really difficult, okay? So first thing is to know that you can change something, you can perform something if you are not from these high institutions. So all this started just as a project to build something that was alive. And first thing you need is to handle liquids, because we know a lot about 3D printing. It's now in a fashion, so there is a lot of resource of how to build your own printer. But if you want to work with liquids, you have to make some modifications. And once you have these modifications, you can create something to print with chocolate or with other kind of food. You can also build your own castle with concrete, or you can employ it in arts. Not just in ceramic, but you can print also with bacteria and with all other kind of living cells. Okay, on Sunday we'll have a workshop on this, so I wouldn't say more now. So why we are using bioprinting? We want to build tissues. To build a tissue or an organ, we need a scaffold, so a physical construct that allows us to put the cells inside to construct something. In the manual or common tissue approach, this is normally made with a bioprinter or with another kind of procedures to build the scaffold, and then you see the cells inside. This is not very homogeneous, and you cannot control the positions of the cells. If you want to build something more complicated, like a kidney, you have to see all the structure that is in the histology of this tissue. And if you look at this, you realize how complex is it, how hierarchical structures you have to follow to be able to construct something like this. And then you realize you cannot use the manual tissue engineering approaches. And that's how bioprinting started. So first thing you need is a printer. It's just a machine that allows you to put something in 3 dimensions, so a Cartesian machine, and a system to deposit the cells. Patrick was talking before about the syringe pump. This is a commercial syringe pump, and it costs a lot of hundreds of euros. So there are a lot of new technologies that allow you to work with biomaterials, liquids, and cells. But normally they are very, very expensive. So my approach was to develop some kind of technology that allowed me to work with cells. I tried different technologies, but you cannot forget that you're working with living human cells. So you have to take care. You have to care them, okay? And you cannot provoke any damage in the membrane. You cannot work under not physiological conditions, okay? So afterwards, after all these research in technologies for pumping, I developed a very simple syringe pump that can be printed, and that is now testing in different countries. So different people has printed and can assemble it without problem and have used it with alginate, other hydrogels, also gelatins. And I will put this outside. I'm working now in the documentation. I know I'm working for long now in the documentation, but I didn't have time. I really expect to have everything in the Open Bioprinting website in October. And with this, you will be able to build all the things we have seen before. Okay, but we also will need some very safety environment to work with cells, and this is one of the problems that I have found in my job, is that at the end I need 1 feet in a research council or in an institution, because if I want to work with human cells, I need a level 2 biological lab, and this is something that is not easy for biohacking. Okay, so I really want to talk in other meetings about how can we make this affordable? How can we build this kind of labs where more people can get involved in more, I don't know how to say, more complex research, so we can really compete and be in there in science that they take account in us. I don't know how to explain that. So we have to avoid to have bacteria contamination and not to fry the cells. This is because when you start, it's very common to kill the cells just because you fry them, also with the microscope, at least for me, and you have to feed them and remove the toxins and everything, really hard. So this is the web I'm working on now. All the pieces are now in GitHub. As I told you, I'm working in the documentation. I would like if any of you want to contribute with the project. You can share your experience, your pieces, whatever you want in this page. People from Aquarium, Vanessa, is going to publish now the printing with vegetal cells that they are performing in the group. So I really encourage you to be part of this, to help the bioprinting community to rise, because I know there are different platforms, but we have to, we need to get together in one community so we can continue, not just a lot of little points that at the end doesn't arrive to any point, okay? So the only thing you will need to complete this process is the biomaterials, but if you want more information about that, you will have to come to the hydrogels workshop, okay? So thank you so much for your attention.
Check, check. Thank you. Thank you. So one other round of applause for Nieves, please. Thank you. Okay, two more tech talks here. So up next, we've got Pat from Thailand and Freak Lab. Everybody make some noise for Pat. Pat's gonna, thank you. And Pat's gonna talk about biological human-computer interfaces. So very, very interesting talk. Okay, yeah, you go ahead.
Hello, hello. Hi everyone, my name is Pat. The first question I would ask, who here loves dinosaur? Woo! That's awesome. Well, dinosaur is the thing that brings me to biology, and might be the case for some of you as well. But dinosaur is not the only thing that I'm interested in. I'm also passionate in technology. And traditionally, the way that technology and biology interact is that, you know, we use technology to study biology. We build tools, as some of the previous amazing speakers was talking about. Or we use biology for technology. We use knowledge that we learn, we mimic, and make a better technology. But in my case, I wonder, what if we mix biology and technology together and use it as a design element? What kind of interaction would we see? Maybe like this, Stegosaurus with high-tech gadget. So the way that I investigate this, I ask what-if question, and then build prototypes, and then ask more questions. However, I don't know all the answers to the question that I create, but I'm curious. So I will share some of my curiosity with you today. So there are 3 domains that I explore, and I would like to share it with you. First, starting with data. So human is a complex system, and we have many things that's going on inside our body, from gene to metabolism to proteins, and this data inside our body is invisible. What if we can kind of extract this meaningful and helpful information and make it visible outside of our body? What if we can turn our biological data inside out? So we make a prototype, and this one is a wearable technology fashion project that responds to the change of hormone inside the body. So there was a lot of it's inspired by my mom, who worked in the public health, and as David mentioned, from Thailand, the population is declining. So this kind of tool allow the couple to have a healthy life when they want to have baby. So, but making this wearable technology is also speculative in the sense that we kind of push the boundaries further, and yeah. But the way we do it, we connect the wearable text with a 3D printed dress, and also the biosensor that we attach in the dress. However, wearing biological data on your body is also create a lot of question in terms of biopolitics, and that's our intention. We would like to explore this area. What does it mean if we wear our data inside out? Is it a kind of empowerment or is it a kind of oppression? Or what is the privacy issue here? The second domain that I would like to talk about is the idea of energy. And biological systems need energy, and one of the way that we just experience is just having lunch or eating food, right? And if you look at the trend on how humans prepare the meal, we can see that from hunting mammoth to just going to the restaurant close by, our physical strength and energy that we use in getting this food are like decreasing and decreasing. So, we put energy to gain more energy, but what if in the future we can just, create our food with our mind, not going hunting, not doing anything, just thinking about it. So we prototype this idea by connecting the food 3D printer that we make in the lab with the brain-computer interface, the OpenBCI. So this is my friend in the Freak Lab wearing the EEG machine. So the idea is that we connect the brain with the machine learning that will be able to classify the emotion of the person and then send that to the 3D printer. So if you're unhappy, then the 3D printer will print something nice for you, like chocolate, to make your mood feel better. And so we can kind of have customized food based on our experience and feeling. Yeah, and it's also bring a lot of question about if we make food with our mind, what does it mean to consume food? Is it still the same as go hunting mammoth a long time ago? And as people used to say, you are what you eat. Now you eat what you are, because the food are produced by your mind, right? And the last thing is about application. We all have app, and some of you are using maybe Facebook app or Twitter right now. This is my recent work. We were exploring the idea that, one of the reasons that our mobile phone is very powerful because we have App Store. We'll be able to access to hundreds of millions of applications. And we interact with this application with like new novel technique like voice recognition, like you talk and then the phone responds back. What if we have a bio app store? What if we can install, the DNA or the group of genes inside our body and download it from online platform? Or what if we can kind of use voice recognition to kind of edit gene? Like if I say, hey, I want to make this organism red, and then a phone recognize my voice, and then be able to kind of, pick the right molecular circuit, the DNA circuit that corresponds to that, and send it to bacteria, and the bacteria turn red. Think about it. You just say, I want it red, and then the bacteria become red. So now you're modifying life form with voice. So we are prototyping this project right now, and you can look at our website to see more. But these three examples of new interaction between biological system and digital system and humanity, it's very interesting to me to think about the future. And these are the new interaction that I talk about. So traditionally, HCI, human-computer interaction, we always speculate on, when the new technology arrives, how humans will interact with it. Now we have bio as part of it, and we'd like to welcome all of you to be part of this ongoing questioning and thinking and prototyping process of thinking how might bio interact with humanity. And as I say, I don't know, but I'm curious. And I'm very excited, as well as my Stegosaurus, and I'm looking forward to see how this moves forward. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Pat, that was amazing. So you blew my mind, and now if my mind is what I don't even know. The metaphors are just mixed up in my head, but I know that was amazing. Thank you. One more time for Pat, everybody. Thank you. And Pat, you're doing an unconference on this as well, right? You should do it. This is such a great topic. I think everybody will love it. Please do it. And so the final speaker of this session, I want to introduce somebody very near and dear to my heart, okay? Everybody make some noise for Thras, okay? This is Thras. So Thras is a student here at the Center for Bits and Atoms. He's also a member of our community lab at EMW. And he's a Renaissance man. He does everything. He takes cool pictures. He knows about AI. He can fab and build things. He can do wet lab things. So Thras kind of has all of the abilities. I don't know how you do it, but he does. So Everybody, please welcome Thras.
All right, so, okay, this is my Hello World slide because I forgot to sign up on the Hello World timesheet. But in short, essentially, as David said, I'm at the Center for Bits and Atoms and the MIT Media Lab. I mostly work on using deep learning for solving biological problems. I'm also part of the EMW community and help with BioDaBits, and essentially part of how to grow and how to make for the past 3 years. So it's so amazing for me to see so many faces that I was seeing through Skype or Cisco Hangouts or whatever else close in person now. So deep learning. Okay, I avoided using that word in the title because it's used so much lately, but essentially deep learning has revolutionized almost every science and technology field currently. Essentially, deep learning, if you would give a 10-second definition, is technological and theoretical advances in the field of machine learning that allow to train bigger and bigger neural networks or mathematical models. And then currently it's being used almost everywhere. In your phone, for example, whether you have any type of phone or an iPhone here, Siri is using more than 20 technologies that are based on using deep learning artificial intelligence in order to analyze your voice, to analyze your text, and to mine huge databases in the web in order to give you answers. More recently, we were able to use deep learning and AI systems. Apologies, the weather in Boston is crazy. So AI to solve games like Go, or more recently, as Elon Musk said in a tweet here, we're able to play online games that are so complex and have so many different features, and we trained an AI system to play them better than the best players in their fields. But of course, here we're about biology, and deep learning has been, revolutionizing every data analytics algorithm or pipeline in biology too. Those are some of the recent and maybe not so recent headlines that I found over the web. There are news like big pharmaceutical companies investing millions of dollars to AI startups in order to revolutionize drug discovery. There are news that we have solved breast cancer detection problems using computer vision and deep learning. There is this amazing paper title called Mosquito Detection with Neural Networks, the buzz of deep learning, which is incredibly, it shows the incredible variety of problems that deep learning has been applied to. So, but, the real question is, why should you care about deep learning? Or why should a biohacker community or community biotechnology care about deep learning? And essentially, I'm here to tell you 3 reasons, and I hope I'll do it pretty fast so that we can all go for a coffee break. The first one is that, open hardware has a tough job to do. You have all these proprietary, huge, large devices that you have to hack in order to make accessible. But in software, it's actually pretty amazing, and one of the reasons that deep learning is so developed in such a scale is that almost everything is open access. Even the most complex algorithms that are being used by Facebook or Google or any other company to analyze the data are actually available both as a scientific paper in arXiv and bioRxiv, but also as the algorithm per se that you can hack with in GitHub or this new GitKive, which explains GitHub models actually. And the licensing is, in most cases, for the algorithm is open source, and you can redistribute it and modify it. The other important part is that there is a ton of data that is available publicly. In databases like Uniprot, we have 80 million protein sequences that have been sequenced through different organisms. And out of these 80 million, for 14 million protein sequences, we have absolutely no idea what they do. So literally, if you put any online tool, bioinformatics tool, one of those 14 million protein sequences, you can find no information. And we also have more than 3,900 genomes available through the Open Genome Project that really the biohacking community should start hacking deep learning, because we have so many fundamental problems in biology that seem to be able to be solved using deep learning and AI, such as protein folding or decrypting the genome and associating cancer genes with cancer phenotypes or any other disease. And essentially, all of us should hack in all these three word clouds that I have here. One is in the sequencing or gathering the data. The other is on the synthesis or being able to synthesize new genes and make new experiments with many proteins. And then in the end, using deep models, deep learning models that we also need to hack and form to work with biological data, we can actually identify important biological information for us and for the society. So the second point I want to make is that essentially AI and deep learning is not here to replace all of us, all of our data analytics skills or all of the jobs that people do in bioinformatics. AI is here to work with us. Essentially, citizen science is the biggest ally of deep learning because with the help of people around the world, we're able to gather data sets and annotate them so that they can be used in order to train deep learning models. EyeWire, which most of you know, helps map the retinal tissue behind the eye. And then Zooniverse has more than 72 million image classification across fields from astrobiology to oceanography to more recent biology data sets. And even protein folding has a lot of work being done by David Baker at the University of Washington on having people solve problems using our minds, our intuition, and then using the data to train deep learning models. So it's really helpful, the next step in training deep learning models would be to essentially use as many people as we can in the planet to actually produce data that can be used to train them. And then last but not least, actually this is my favorite slide, I hope I could put more logos here, but those fit, is essentially what I call a global community deep learning, which is not about what you might have thought when you saw the slide, which is essentially getting data from all around the world. What I really want to say here is that we really, really, really need diversity and inclusion in data sets. If I train a machine learning model only on white male data that are available in most scientific labs or clinical trials, then my model is never going to work into anybody else than white male people. Or if I don't train on this particular tribe in the middle of the Amazon or somewhere in Africa that has this particular mutation that produces this cancer, I will never be able to train a model that actually can detect and associate genes for that cancer. So the shout out here is essentially, please engage more and more people to deal with deep learning and learn about the value of the data they have to generate and the value of the models that are going to be used in almost every diagnostics or every biological tool in the next 10 years. And then if you want to discuss more about this, we're hosting an conference this Sunday at 1 p.m. with Aronav, talking about what I described now, and also one point that it's really we really need to talk about is that people are talking that biotechnology is going to destroy the world. People are talking that AI is going to destroy the world. Well, combining those two, many people are going to talk that we're going to destroy the world. So it's really the time to think about how do we share data, how do we have regulations and really build this thing together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Taras. One more, keep it going for Taras. Keep it going for Taras. No, I just want them to applaud you more. Yeah. So I think it's important because AI and bio are both going to destroy the world. So maybe they cancel each other out and it saves the world. I don't know. I don't know if that works that way. Okay. So before we go into our break, and I apologize, we've gone. Now it's happened. We're now officially late, so we're going to cut the coffee break a little short. I apologize. But before we do that, I want to introduce two very important people. So Peter, maybe you can help me out with a little intro music.
Final frontier.
Everybody, this is Magda and Gabby. Everybody make some noise. Okay. Okay, so I know you were thinking it was going to be William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, but it wasn't, so I apologize. But I want to introduce briefly Magda and Gabby. So Magda and Gabby are from Takeda, and I was mentioning earlier today, they weren't here at the time, but when I was first trying to figure out how to organize this conference, Takeda was actually our first sponsor. They were I went to Magda's office. We had never met before. We started talking, and I was telling her about this whole movement and what's happening with biotech, and she looked and she was like, yes, that sounds awesome. We'll support it, like instantly, and was like just believed in all of us and believed in what we're doing. So Magda, you're so, and like Takeda is a very, very big pharmaceutical company, right? Like I didn't, when you start interacting with folks, you don't think like, oh, like I'm talking to like Takeda. Takeda is actually very complicated, and there are lots of people within Takeda. So I personally feel very blessed that we get to hang out with Magda because she funds so many awesome, cool things. She funds the Space Initiative here at the Media Lab. She funded this like death mask project with Bjork. She just funds awesome stuff, and she funded us. So anyways, thank you so much, Magda, and thank you so much, Gabby, for all the support. So guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay, and do you want to say something? This is mic number, I should be on. Actually, you can use my mic. Oh, yeah, there you go.
So firstly, I'm so excited. I lost my voice telling everyone about where we're going today. So David is doing most of translations. But ultra happy to be here. You guys are doing amazing work. We heard, we're going to go to the Bio Summit. People who are so excited about biotech, which is our future competitions. And I said, well, not necessarily. We want to collaborate, and we really want to do something with you. So ultra happy to be here. And we have actually an announcement we want to make. We, as Takeda, want to ask for your help with a very special project. And Gabi is here to tell you in more details about it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just use the same mic. So I'm a medical director at Takeda. And what that means is that I design and run clinical trials in human beings to try to come up with new medicines for people who are suffering. And so I'm very happy it's quiet because it's really, really important that we all get together to do this. There are a lot of people in the world suffering from neuropsychiatric diseases, and the group I work with is the group that develops medicines for those patients, and I need your help. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm going to take a moment to really celebrate it because in 2012, I was in this building, and I was at a hackathon called Hacking Medicine. And I pitched working on physician office scheduling software, and very briefly, that one day here in the Media Lab, we formed a company, and last year we sold it to Athena Health, and that little product is going to roll out to 30,000 physicians. So it's a pretty simple idea. All we did in that instance was say, rather than blindly overbooking all the slots to make a schedule, we'll just look at people's behavior and intelligently construct a schedule. That works. You can drastically reduce the variance around the mean number of patients that have to come into the clinic to achieve the goal of seeing enough patients in a day, and it makes everyone's lives better. So this is a place that solves problems, and I'm extremely happy to be back to pitch another one to you. So I work on a team at Takeda called the TACO for One team. It needs a better name. TACO for One is a molecule, and you can rest assured if it works in clinical trials, it'll get a better name. It targets a little receptor inside the brain called GPR139. Now, that's a terrible name for a receptor. It should have an awesome name like, I don't know, the Leonard Nimoy receptor or something awesome. But it's called GPR139 because really nobody really knows what it does. And that's why it only has those letters and numbers associated with it. Well, our molecule increases its function. And that receptor is located in a part of the brain called the habenula. And the habenula's function isn't all that well understood, but it's got to be important. And the reason I say that is because it's been preserved from organisms, from zebrafish, all the way to humans.
And dinosaurs, that's my line.
Yeah, and dinosaurs. Critical. So, we've run a series of animal models looking at the function of the molecule. We have other tools available to us. And what we've seen is that it seems to improve reward, responses to reward. So the first patient population we're going after are patients with schizophrenia. Now, most people are familiar with the positive symptoms of schizophrenia. Those are the hallucinations and delusions. Well, it turns out that over the last few decades, studies of patients with schizophrenia have shown that those are in fact not the principal cause of their morbidity and mortality. And that's because that the available medicines for them take care of those positive symptoms very well. But there are other aspects of the disease that have a high unmet need. And what those aspects are these negative symptoms and cognitive symptoms. So negative symptoms are really amotivation. You don't feel like doing anything. Or anhedonia. You go do the things that you used to love, and for some reason you don't love them anymore. Asociality. You just don't want to be around other people, and you sort of recede into yourself. And so those cause major morbidity with just quality of life, ability to hold down a job. And so we're trying to develop this TACO41 molecule for that indication. But we're not sure it's the right indication. And that's why we're here. There is a ton of omics data out there, and we just don't have a big enough team to go through all of it. One day we will hire all of you. But until then, what we're proposing is a competition of folks to look at the omics data in the habenula about GPR139, its expression patterns, maybe modification at the methylation level of histones. What can we tell about this region, this receptor, that might indicate it's good for some other patient population? And that's the nature of the competition that we're proposing and announcing today.
So in a couple of weeks, we will reach out to all of you via email, I assume, with details on how to enter. And there will be prizes. The details on the prizes, monetary and others, will be spec'd out in this. And we will really ask that you guys participate. Look out what data is there, what can we learn from it, and which patient populations could we help. All the details will be in. We will share data that we have as company. We will make it public. And then we really hope that you can help us and we can solve for this problem together and really help many people together with you, global community of great thinkers and you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And really quickly, so this connects actually with two things. So I wonder too, have you decided on the prizes and the whole process yet?
We are in discussions.
So I just to say, because again, you've got a room full of really brilliant people. Maybe we can give feedback on what would be the incentives that would be most interesting to you guys. I don't know,
awesome.
to help,
Yes.
I don't know if that's
I mean, I think we've ruled out the Lamborghini. It's not going to be a Lamborghini.
Okay, well, no Lamborghini, but we'll figure it out. But I don't know, if you guys want some suggestions on that too, that could be a part of this. I don't know.
So we are looking at different options. Obviously, there is monetary incentives, which we are looking at as the basis. But what else would motivate you? Is it an internship? Is it working with us? Star Trek soundtrack, whatever.
Yeah, there's a hand up.
You guys have some of the best laboratory facilities on the planet globally. You've got a bunch of people in this room who have access to those facilities, or at least the equipment that you guys are throwing it away. So I'd say, look at doing that, get that equipment out, and bring those people in, give them training, reagents, speak to all the sales reps that you know, and get these guys cheaper reagents so they can do more science as well.
That's a great idea.
Wow, very good. Okay, cool. So what we can do is maybe with Magda, we can, Magda's here, so we can facilitate a little interaction. People can give some feedback. And then this actually connects with some of the sessions tomorrow about sustainability and how to get biohackers paid. Okay, so this is, maybe a work in progress, but I think this will be a really fun interaction, and we can figure out how to create some really good incentives and get brain power on solving really important medical questions. So awesome. Thank you so much one more time for Magda and for Gabby. Really appreciate you guys. Okay, so it has happened. We are really behind, so I'm going to propose a couple of things. One, we have a few workshops that are going to start right now. Sebastian, can you come up? So everybody make some noise for the plant biologist himself, the man, the legend, Sebastian. I don't know if you... Does everybody here all follow? We're all friends with Sebastian on Facebook, right? Like, all of us are, right? Everybody is. We all follow Sebastian's Lab Notebook religiously on Facebook, right? So I know I do. So Sebastian wasn't able to join us this morning, so this is Sebastian's 1 minute Hello World, and then Sebastian's going to start his plant tissue culture workshop, okay? So those of you that sign up for that can head out for that. So Sebastian, this is for you.
Okay, 60 seconds, right? Cool. Hi, everyone. Hi. My name's Sebastian, and I make flowers. That's basically it. So I do plant genetic engineering at home in the 3rd bedroom of my mom's apartment that's fully fleshed out with a molecular biology lab with all the tools necessary to do science. Everything from genetic engineering to metabolics research, protein expression, purification, all of that in the comfort of my PJs. And the reason why I'm here today is to do a mental uplink with anybody who's going to take the workshop and unload everything I know in about an hour and a half. I'm serious, it's like literally everything. So I might go a little fast, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna annotate the slides and then distribute it. So the idea is to spread the skills necessary to do plant biotech, like a virus, so that more people do it. Because I hear a lot of people saying that plants are difficult to work with. I wanna prove them wrong. So yeah, so come join me.
Okay, so this is the part, this is I think the first juncture where we're gonna start to get the FOMO, okay? Because the next session is amazing. It's actually maybe one of my favorite sessions of the whole conference, Global Collaborations, Infrastructure, and Sharing. But we have some workshops that are gonna start breaking off a little bit. So Sebastian's gonna take his plant crew. Julie is gonna take the few people that are gonna do some amino stuff. And then Shriek, who's in the back, is gonna take a few people that are doing a mini microscope workshop, okay? So that's gonna happen now. So if you're doing any of those workshops, you can join those folks. And then what we're gonna do is take, how much time can we take for a break? Yeah, my God. Can we take a 10-minute break? Is that okay? Sorry, it's just we're getting really behind. So stretch your legs and then come back. But the sessions we have next are gonna be really, really awesome. Jogl, Open Bio, Open MTA, Citizen Health, Responsive Science, really, really great stuff. So please come back in 10 minutes, okay? I know your brains are tuned to the cowbell, so keep your brains open. Thank you, guys.
So I think from here on out, there's no more
I did also have this guy's asking a question. Get your comment. I open the shotgun, the guy in front of me starts shooting the food with that. Come on.
just look there. Most people, like you have a massive waiting list as well.
We can probably take a few more. So basically, we said 24 because we've only got 24 reactions, so then everyone gets their own reaction. We could probably physically fit more people into the workshop.
I actually didn't get in.
You did not. You could come anyway.
Yeah, that would be cool. But even let's say we don't have the same people, I would like people kind of like prepare the box, and I could then come with all the boxes, like the massive amount of illuminators. And the nice thing is with the matrix, it's flexible. So let's say people just wanted one reaction, or we could make what we just did because it was kind of fun, make a picture with all the reactions that people built together. So you could make 2-3 different reactions. But we wanted to try is actually making a GIF, because we can turn on all the different LEDs, but that could be something if people want to play around.
And they've only got 24 reactions, so they're gonna have to be.
Then it's probably like if you use one pixel, or like if people just want to make something small, maybe the one would work then well, because I think on Fernando will get one. You could set up in one thing, but people could even follow them somewhere here what is happening.
If we do one pixel and one of Fernando's microscopes, then I think we're.
And what could be nice with the pixels? So we do have express self-free readers from our last year. So maybe it's actually quite nice to show that in the beginning. You can show that in. I mean, everybody kind of like knows GFP, but maybe it's something nice to communicate. We have one big one. That's the output. Can you make it? It takes a lot.
I mean, so all they're going to have to do is pet 3 things to achieve it. So
I know.
I wish we could have had more time to come up with a circle or something, but it just wasn't. Because with Fernand traveling, and I looked into it, but just because we don't have interesting plasmids already in the lab, by the time we've ordered them up, someone's grown them up, done the mini preps, and the rest of it, it was just.
I mean, we tried to make something happen, but it's just.
If we'd have got like 2 months' notice, it might have come together, but.
We were still hoping. Maybe we can make it work. We're still in the process.
Great. So maybe, So what's the total cost of one pixel?
So at the moment, the biggest cost is like the LED matrix, what costs on Adafruit, I think $24.
Okay.
The beauty is like the rest is cardboard.
Right.
And I found a UK company who sells the plastic that we need as a filter. they're not an optics thing or at all. They're cheap. And they sell fast, so that is just a few cents. So, and the beauty just with this now, so like I use a Bluetooth feather, so you can control it with your phone. But it's just really nice and it's tiny. And it is just one pin that you have to plug in and a battery pack, so you can run it over a long time. So you can also just use it for many other things. So let's say you want to actually add a sensor, or you have a much more specific project, or you want to add a camera. It's just more flexible, so it's multi-purpose. So it's not that you have like then only a transilluminator. You actually can do like many things with it, so it justifies a little bit. And if you go for smaller ones, because nobody always wants to make like 8-way expressions, then the price goes down.
And what do you do with the cardboard? Are you cutting it by hand or are you laser cutting?
It's a laser cut. So it even has the engravement, so it's just it stacks in itself. You really just fold it up and it's a box. But it's just like with banana, some people also don't have a laser cutter. So it is made in a way that you can actually print it on a printer on a cheap paper and just cut it out.
That's nice. I need to do this for spectrometers because we're doing a Festival of Ideas event on colour, Colour Institute. So really, I don't want to think about that. I've never put cardboard in place.
Let me know. I'm very curious to how to do laser cut.
Oh, well, I might do that because I need to make that would be really helpful.
And I also love that stuff. So.
Fantastic. Right, I'm going to go to the tin and get the
Okay.
You just have to grab the bit at some point about national.